Many things have changed with Brexit, especially when it comes at marketing UCITS to retail investors in the UK. But some things stayed the same. Today we talk about the requirement of UK facilities for UCITS recognized under the OFR, Overseas Fund Regime, and the most common blind spots for UCITS managers. The regulatory environment for European UCITS funds targeting the UK retail fund market was significantly overhauled with the withdrawal of the UK from the European Union. After a period of so-called temporary marketing permission regime, where the UK retail fund market was essentially closed to new entrant UCITS, the Overseas Fund Regime opened to new funds last September 2024. Under the EU passporting regime pre-Brexit, UCITS enjoyed seamless access to UK market based on the UCITS directive, which enabled cross-border marketing subject to minimal regulatory hurdles. And already at the time of the marketing passport, there was an obligation to maintain facilities in the UK for local investors. The facilities served as a designated point of access for UK investors to obtain fund documentation and price information, facilitate subscription and redemption in the funds, and lodge complaints, ensuring that there was a direct engagement with the UCITS representatives in the local language in the UK. Conceived in an analog era, UK facilities were inherently tied to a physical presence in the UK. UCITS prospectuses were required to list a specific brick-and-mortar address in the UK, often associated to an office where investors could visit during business hours. The Overseas Fund Regime imposes new obligations before a concern only for UK funds and their management, such as compliance with the local financial promotion regime, value for money assessments, but the Overseas Fund Regime retains also the core requirement of the UK facilities, adapted to reflect the behavior of modern investors. Today, UK facilities must balance traditional accessibility with digital innovation, aligning with the Financial Conduct Authority's focus on investor protection. Brexit meant regained sovereignty for the UK vis-à-vis the European Union in the first place. That translated in UK policymakers having now the ability to prioritize their own agenda when it came at the design of their own internal regulation, rather than having to follow the agenda of the European Union. Post-Brexit, a significant divergence emerged between the UK and the EU in the overall approach towards retail investors. UK authorities have been traditionally vocal on their concerns about the PRIIPs regulation, for instance, to the point that the PRIIPs were not formally reintroduced in the UK post-Brexit and now have been replaced completely by an entirely new regime for retail disclosure. Propelled by the objectives of the Capital Markets Union, the EU prioritized the reduction of operational barriers and costs to cross-border fund distribution through progressive digitalization of the marketing authorizations. And digitalization is the name of the game also when it comes at delivering local facilities for UCITS investors across Europe. Full digital delivery of local facilities for UCITS is now standard in Europe, and that includes fund documents, assistance with subscription and redemption in the funds, and complaint support mechanisms. The shift is one of the consequences of the Cross-Border Distribution Directive, which aimed at fostering distribution of small and mid-sized funds in multiple European member states, ultimately supporting the deepening of the single markets for capital in Europe. In contrast, the UK Financial Conduct Authority, through Chapter 9 of the Call Sourcebook, maintains a more conservative stance on the digitalization of local facilities. OFR UCITS must ensure free access to key fund documents, provide a contact for subscription and redemption, and offer a complaint resolution channel. Digital delivery of the UK facilities is now allowed only subject to certain conditions. UCITS prospectuses explicitly states electronic media for the communication, investors provide explicit consent to the use of that medium, and all interactions are conducted in English at no cost for the investor. If the first two conditions cannot be met, UCITS managers must maintain, in addition to the electronic medium of choice, also a physical UK address accessible to the public during the business hours to act as local facilities. The UK prioritizes investor protection and accessibility over operational efficiency and reduction of cost of distribution. Unlike the European Union's streamlined digital model, the UK's hybrid framework creates a compliance challenge and an additional cost for EU-based managers without a physical presence in the UK. If you're seeking recognition for your UCITS under the overseas fund regime, amongst other things, you will continue to have to offer these facilities to UK investors then. And for the UCITS managers that have already a physical presence in the UK, like one UK entity that is part of the group for instance, it is customary for them to name that UK entity for the purposes of the UK facilities. These managers will still need an agreement between that UK entity and the actual UCITS fund that is seeking recognition under the overseas fund regime in the UK. And the requirement for a physical presence for the UK facilities remains when the prospectus of the UCITS does not contain an indication of the electronic medium to be used for the communication with investors, or investors have not agreed to the use of that electronic medium for the communication with the UCITS and their promoters. For UCITS that are new entrants to the UK market, it is much easier to establish an electronic medium for communication with UK investors and potentially also gain acceptance to the use of that medium from them. But if in doubt, it remains much easier to appoint a third-party provider of UK facilities, whose UK address shall be indicated in the prospectus of the UCITS, with a view then to progressively transition to an electronic medium for the communication with investors and get rid of the physical presence and the additional cost that comes with it down the line. This is also the approach that is suggested by the UK regulator, the FCA. But whether you are the third party or you are using the UK entity of your group for the purposes of offering the UK facilities, one of the tasks under the UK facilities deserves particular attention, and that is dealing with subscriptions and redemptions. Whilst the rest of the other tasks under the UK facilities do not border with license activities in the UK, dealing with subscription and redemption does. And more namely, here we are talking about the license activity of arranging deals in investments, as described under the perimeter guidance number 8 of the UK FCA. Realistically, and this is something that was acknowledged also by EU policymakers when amending the rules under Article 92 UCITS Directive on local facilities, retail investors develop deeper digital ties with their distributors nowadays and would naturally go to them to deal with subscriptions and redemptions of their funds. That said, if a third-party provider of UK facilities states that they will deal with subscription and redemption, which is something that will be also mentioned in the prospectus of your UCITS, be wary and ask about their licensing. If they are not licensed, and we have seen many, they are likely purporting to carry out a licensed activity on your behalf and expose yourself to the consequences of that. The same is the case when a UK entity of the group takes the role of the UK facilities, especially if they have no license as such to deal with retail investors. There are specific ways to provide this part of the UK facilities that reduce the risk of being seen as carrying out a licensed activity in the UK. And if you reached this part of the video, I wanted to thank you, and I wanted to invite you to hit like to the video and subscribe to the channel. There is much more to come on fund distribution. Thank you for watching and stay tuned.